Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 276 of the Canadian Football Countdown, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network and the Alternative Football Network. Ryan and Trey here with you this evening for our first episode of the CFL offseason. It's our 2024 CFL season wrap-up show. Snow is on the ground in Winnipeg, and no CFL football this weekend, but the first batch of CFL offseason news, so you know it's the end of November when that's happening. Trey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I'll be honest. I'm a little shooken up. I decided to play Call of Duty late last night, and I was playing the story mode, and there was a random level where your guy gets all high on stuff, and he sees zombies everywhere, and I haven't recovered. Playing like at 2 in the morning was not a great idea for that. But other than that, yeah, snow on the ground. Man, does it feel like this was a long season? I'm tired from this season. it feels like this was almost 2 or 3 seasons rolled up into one. I was thinking about it. You had the first part where everyone was on Montreal and Saskatchewan, and then you had the middle part where they started getting hurt and started losing, and the return of Kelly and Rourke, and then the late third of the season where Bombers are on a roll. All these and Hamilton started looking good. It was all these different things going on. It's weird to think it was one giant ass season. So I'm a little looking forward to this holiday, and it's weird. Christmas, man, less a month today, I guess.
A month today, yeah. Recording this Monday night.
The mall is already awful, man. I was at Walmart yesterday, and that was awful.
I was at the mall on the weekend and was like, yeah, this is a little too hectic for me.
Got to find like a nice time at like Tuesday at 11 a.m. or something. Hard to do when we have lives and jobs, but yeah, that's the time to go.
Yeah, for sure. Black Friday coming up this weekend as well. American Thanksgiving this week. Yeah. Early happy Thanksgiving to all of our American listeners or viewers and friends. Trey and I were just talking about the NFL lineup for Thanksgiving, and Cowboys and Giants is going to be a football game of some kind. Probably not a good one, but you know what? There's interesting things that'll happen regardless.
If it ends up as good as the Washington-Dallas game from this
that's fair. That's fair.
Really was just a 1-point game if you don't count that onside kick return at the end. So, man, that's wild to tie it and miss an extra point. So maybe the Giants will have something good for us. Is Danny DeVito the quarterback still? Or is it
Tommy DeVito? I don't think it's Danny DeVito.
Holy, Adam's not here, but the name screw-ups are still coming. But anyway, I'm tired. Don't play Call of Duty till 3 in the morning. Okay. And then on the weekend, there was a crazy UFC in China that didn't start till 2 a.m. I stayed up for that. So my sleep is all screwed up.
All right. Well, we will try to move quickly through things tonight so Trey can get to bed.
I'm going to play Call of Duty all night again.
Oh, okay. Well, there's no hope then. I feel you, though, on the season being long, and I feel like that every year once we get down the stretch drive of the season, especially with the podcast doing it weekly, you start to run out of storylines that don't repeat themselves. You've seen every team play each other for the most part. You've seen all those different things. And it's a tough slog through the end of the season. Then playoffs gets exciting, and then I get really excited for the offseason. The offseason shows are some of my favorite ones to do because there's just a lot of news we can talk about, a lot of speculation, and we've got a number of hot topics to talk about today. We're going to recap the season in the sense that we're going to take a look through each of the teams here today. We're going to touch on how the season went for them and one big question for them heading into the offseason. I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of the coaching news as part of that, a lot of the quarterback carousel that's on everybody's mind and where pieces may land there. We'll do that throughout the night as well. We'll take some fan questions that we had gotten throughout the week. And of course, if you are joining us live tonight, good evening to you. And you can send in your comments and questions live in our live chat over on our YouTube and Facebook feeds. Thanks to our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. Learn more at GameTimeTV.ca or Facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. And before we get too far into things, we always want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Otra-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. Check out the link in the episode description for our Discord community as well. Join us over there. Constant chatter on CFL news as it comes out throughout the off season. Obviously, some of the other things like fantasy talk and the game chats, not as much during the off season, but we have some fun there and we chat NFL and things like that as well. You can see Trey's UFC picks in there as well. There and anything and everything sports related. There's generally a channel for you to chat in. So I hope you join us there. It's free to join. Link is in the episode description. I will also call out before we move into our topics here. If you haven't already, go back and check out our Grey Cup post-game show that we had the whole crew together Sunday night right after the game. Emotions were real. Emotions were raw after that game. And if you want to hear us rant about how well the Argos did and everything that went wrong for the Bombers, go back and check that out because I thought it was a really fun episode.
I just got over it, and then you reminded me.
I have a different definition of fun than most people do.
Yeah, I know.
But let's get into wrapping up this season. As you said, it was a long season. There were all those different stretches to it. Besides that, how did you feel about this season as a whole to kick things off from around the CFL? Would you call it a good year, bad year?
Nobody died, so, I mean, nobody on the field. Anyway, no, I think it was a good year, all considering. I'm actually a little surprised about Ambrosie's firing, or however it's officially worded. I actually don't mind him at all, and I thought he did okay in the circumstances, and we could talk about that too during the offseason as that's going on. But as a season, it had everything. You had dominance from certain teams. Every team, not every team, but there was a lot of teams in it early. Montreal had a big chunk. Like I said, Montreal and Saskatchewan seemed to be in it. Montreal seemed to be doing well from an attendance perspective, because usually we clump the three. There's the three big cities, right? We always want to clump in together. BC and Montreal seem to be doing a lot better. Toronto winning the damn cup and looking like they have a good team contender, and their guys going to Leaf games and Raptor games and stuff. That's good for them. So I think attendance was up from what I saw.
I think so.
I think attendance was up. TV numbers looked up. What was it, like 14, 15 million Canadians watched the Grey Cup at some point? That's like 40% of our population right there. Curious what the American numbers are, if they keep track of that on CBS Sports. I think it's an all success. When the Prairies does good, Winnipeg and Saskatchewan, which they did if they were in the West Finals, that's always bodes well. The three big cities did well, both on and off the field. And Alberta's the only kind of question mark, and honestly, I could see things turning around in both of those. Well, Edmonton more, because maybe we'll talk about something.
We'll get into both.
Calgary, but Edmonton. I think Edmonton's closer to a turnaround than people think. So I think 8 out of the 9 teams are in very good spots. Calgary, they get to host a Grey Cup, and they're getting some improvements on McMahon Stadium, so I guess it's not end of the world.
That is true. They are finally getting new turf, so maybe this will be the year next year where there's no season-ending Achilles injuries at McMahon Stadium, which seems to be a pretty common thing. No, I agree with you that overall this year was pretty positive. Biggest thing for me was the parity across the league. Like, you had those teams jump out early to, Montreal, Saskatchewan, BC kind of got hot early in the season, and who saw it fully coming that Winnipeg would start the year, 0-4, 2-6, something like that to start the year. They start to turn it around. Ottawa looking really good early in the season as well. That was a pleasant surprise after how they've been the last couple of years. And then kind of everything flipped on its head the second half of the season. Winnipeg got hot. Hamilton got hot. Ottawa tanked things throughout the second half of the season. A disastrous fall off there. And even Calgary started the year kind of good, especially at home, until things fell off the rails. So, and we, at some point in the midway of the season, we're also strongly considering Edmonton a Grey Cup contender after they strung a couple of wins together there. So, to me, it was the parity this year. I don't think it was a hard year betting-wise, certainly, because this year, more than most, I felt like any team could win at almost any time. The only time I didn't necessarily was Montreal early in the season. I didn't see a scenario where anybody beat them except that one Argos game where Fajardo got injured. And then we saw the rise of Davis Alexander out of that. We'll talk about him tonight when we get into Montreal a little bit more as well. But I think there was a good balance this year. We saw some bright young talent across the CFL stepping up. I thought the Rookie of the Year conversation at the CFL Awards was the strongest across the board I could think of in recent years. A handful of receivers. You had Nick Anderson won it for the Elks, who set records with tackles and stuff. A lot of young pieces across the board where we're going to start rotating some of these older guys out, these aging quarterbacks like your Trevor Harris, your Zach Collaros, your Bo Levi Mitchell. How many years do they have left? And then we see some of those younger pieces come in. It felt like a nice, fresh, exciting CFL season this year. And kudos to the league for all the steps in the right direction. And yes, Richard in the chat saying the coin was money for a bit. Yeah, the coin was leading our betting challenge for a little bit. That just goes to show the parity in CFL.
Yeah, if I have one complaint, it's not even a complaint, like you were talking about awards. That was my one thing is the other awards, there seemed to be a weird mix. Like Oliveira I don't think anybody really deserved MOP, MOC. It's for some of those categories. It seemed like the league was so even, and it was weird that sometimes you looked at and thought guys were being exceptional, and sometimes you wonder if it's a lack of talent in certain spots. But it's a very interesting thing, and I found this. Yeah, this year was, I don't know. This year was wild, man. Hopefully next year and capped off by a good Grey Cup, a great halftime, and hopefully a crazy offseason. I could see 4 or 5 different quarterback changes, man, in different jerseys. It could be a wild, and coaching, so it's gonna be wild.
Yeah, there's a lot of changes. There's news that's come out already since the Grey Cup that we're going to get into tonight. So let's start going team by team and dive into this a little bit. Pick a team, Trey. What team do you want to start talking about?
Let's go with Calgary. I like that one because WTF happened to the Stampeders is our little question in our notes. So that's a good one to start off with.
Yeah.
Right?
So I reached out and asked the folks on the social medias to send us in some questions this week on what's your hardest hitting question you want us to try to answer as we look ahead to the offseason. And as we've mentioned in recent weeks, the podcast is now on Blue Sky. So if you've migrated over to Blue Sky, you can find us there at cfcountdownpod.bluesky or whatever the handles are there. It's CF Countdown Pod if you search it. You can find me there as well, Cooper Trooper 42. I don't think Trey is there yet and may never be.
No, I love seeing the Dogecoin tweets from Elon all day, so I don't have time for another one, man. I quite enjoy. I don't know Elon. I get a kick out of Elon. I know he's not for everyone. But when you sit stoned playing Call of Duty till 3 a.m, Elon's free.
All right.
But maybe I'm getting tempted with this Blue Sky. We'll see. Maybe I'll check it out.
Yeah, I think it's fun. It seems like we're getting some good interaction starting over there. So anyways, one of the questions we got came from KO Cowtown. They wanted to know, WTF happened to the Stampeders? And I think it's a question we all want to know. This year for Calgary, a disastrous season, 5-12-1. Their playoff streak ends. They finally don't make the playoffs this year. 1-8 record on the road. You had that chaos mid-season. Jake Mayer gets pulled. They put Logan Bonner in for a game. He throws 5 picks. All of a sudden, Jake Mayer starts next week. They sign PJ Walker, former NFLer. Don't go and play him, cut him, so technically he becomes a free agent, or they put him on the practice roster to the end of the year, never actually played him. They have since signed PJ Walker to, I think, a 3-year deal, I want to say. I could be wrong on the number of years, but seems like a good committing deal there. Everybody's calling for Dave Dickinson to step down from at least one of his roles. He's decided he's going to stick as the GM and the head coach, and they're going to run it back with Dave Dickinson. But they did let go 2 more of the, impactful members of their coaching staff. Mark Killam being one of them. The other name escapes me, who have been with the team for a long time. And then I don't know if you've seen the report that came out this week, but I think the CFL, much like the NFL, has started to do like player grades of teams. Like the NFLPA was sending out reports, and the CFL does as well. And I think the Stamps, from what I've read from headlines, got a D- on their grade from former players. And you had Kadeem Carey, I think it was, right when he won the Grey Cup, in his post-game interview going and saying, the problem over there is one guy and one guy only, and it's Dave Dickinson. I'll repeat the question from from KO Cowtown here for you, Trey. WTF happened to the Calgary Stampeders we knew and hated?
Man. Okay, real quick. It's a 2-year contract for PJ Walker. Decent money, though, $260 according to 3 Down Nation. So, not crazy starter money, but it's up there. But yeah, I think it's the exact same thing that happened to the Patriots. You lost your franchise quarterback, and everything goes to crap, man. You know what I mean? It was the whole Belichick and Brady, and we looked at it. Is it Dickinson or is it Bo Levi? And the fact that Bo Levi was almost the outstanding player of the year while being benched 5 times and started selling lemonade with his daughters. I
think it was just once. It was one. Okay, it was one game where he was benched, and then Powell got injured in the first quarter, and then Bo was back in.
But fair enough. But when he got benched, it sounded like he was done for the year, and the next thing he's an injury, and he led the league in a lot of passing categories. And I think that's what it was when you have a guy like Bo Levi, a lot like Brady. I don't want to say Bo Levi's the Brady of the CFL, but I mean, work ethic, I think it changes your locker room dynamic a lot, right? Just bringing in a guy, like we could see in Winnipeg how much bringing in a guy like Caleros can change the dynamic. Losing that guy can be just as much the other way as well. I think that was a huge part. I also wonder if they got a little drunk on success, right? What we said, their playoff streak finally ended this year. Calgary was one of those teams, like we said, ABC, anybody but Calgary. I think teams like Winnipeg should be wary of this because, this could be them in a few years. I think the Calgary just got too complacent thinking, we'll always find the next guy up. And Mayer wasn't it. Bonner wasn't it. I don't know if Walker will be it. We'll see. They, obviously they hope he is, but I got to think that's where it was just they got so complacent on being the team that's getting chased every year. They didn't see the cliff right in front of them.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And I pulled up the article from 3 Down Nation on the player grades. So the official, just to clarify from reading further into this, the player grade reports are coming out next month, but 3 Down did go and interview a handful of former players, and at least one of them said a D-, and there were some not great comments. And I think it's complacency, and I think it's winning as long as they did masked a lot of things, and everybody got so used to winning that when they don't all of a sudden don't win, the sky is falling. And the exact same thing is going to happen with the Bombers if they enter that rebuild mode, which we all, are kind of bracing for is probably going to happen in 2026, where they've been used to being top of the standings for so long. And then you're going to see, fans, disgruntled when potentially the team takes a major step back. And if they can avoid that, then kudos to them. But Calgary hasn't been able to avoid that. And I think there's a couple of things at play here. One is I think Dave Dickinson is trying to do too much. I am never a fan of coach and GM. I would much rather it be 2 separate roles. I think it's hard to give 100% as a coach when you're busy spending some of your time being GM. And I think it's hard to be doing your job 100% as a GM when you're worried about drawing up plays as a head coach and things like that. So I feel like that has been a sore point for this team ever since he's kind of taken on both of those roles. We know how good Huffnagel was all of those times, and it's still a little unclear to me how much in the day-to-day John Huffnagel is involved in everything. Because I think Calgary is now starting to struggle with that talent pool drying up a little bit. They had so many years where they just found all-star after all-star after all-star in training camp, and they'd lose big pieces, and it was fine because they found replacements for them. Well, now they're not necessarily finding those replacements as often that are gelling on the field. And like you said, Bo, how much of it did he mask as well with his talent over the years? You look at what Bo Levi Mitchell did with his receivers. This is a guy that threw the ball to 8 different guys almost every game. And you have those receivers that weren't as big name that became big name because Bo gave them a chance instead of locking in on a couple of different guys. So I think that played a lot into it where, Jake Mayer hasn't been capable of moving the ball to that many different guys. And I think the game plan is probably still the Bo Levi Mitchell game plan to some degree that this offense runs on, which it can't run on with a whole different quarterback. So I think they need better play calling. They need the boost in personnel. I know Dickinson's not going to step down from either role. I really wish he should have. The biggest key for me going forward from Calgary now, though, is this year they need to change their offseason strategy. I don't think they're in a position right now where they can do what they've done and wait for training camps and wait for those mini camps that they hold down in the States. They need to spend up in free agency, and it's probably starting as early as the quarterback position.
Oh, 100%. And I wonder too how much other things go into scouting, especially when you get American players. How far does something go like, oh, the Kelsey brothers are wearing Bomber jerseys? How far does that go when an American says, well, I want to play for that team, or Toronto, who's won 2 of the last 3, or Montreal, who's been a top team? I wonder how much that goes into that. And maybe using a guy like PJ Walker, maybe he's got some friends down south that could help out. We never know. Calgary's never been that team that we think goes and does crazy off-season pickups, off-season things. They always scout these random diamonds in the duff, or maybe not diamonds in the rough, but enough to get the job done. And yeah, I think this year they might actually have to spend some money, which again, like who are they going to get? Like what quarter, like we'll get talk about, is VA their guy? Is that a question we're going to talk about later? Is Cam Dukes or I'm already so traumatized. I blanked out. Arbuckle. Is Arbuckle going back to Calgary? Like, wasn't he there before?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Who's the guy going to go there? Because I don't know if it's Mayer. I doubt it's Mayer. And I don't know about when a former NFL guy comes in, it never goes as well as you think it does. Right. So I think they need something.
I think Calgary's the team that needs to go the hardest for Vernon Adams Jr. Yeah. And there was the report coming out this week that BC said they're definitely going to trade him this offseason, and they're not going to give him a say in who they're trading him to, which great handling of a class act of your organization to do that. But also pending free agent, they're probably not. You generally don't get a ton out of those deals. So if they're then being picky and choosy with, based on where he wants to go, like they're going to take whatever they can get for Vernon Adams this offseason, the Lions will, because otherwise they're just going to lose him to free agency. I believe he is a pending free agent. I'd be surprised if he wasn't.
I thought he had one more year.
Does he have one more year?
He had 2025. I thought that's what they worked out before Rourke came back. I don't know. But we talk about this every other week, I feel like.
We can look it up here.
Maybe because why are they gonna? I mean, were they gonna trade him just for first negotiation rights?
Oh yes, okay, you are correct. Yeah. Okay, so that changes things a little bit for me there, right? Because I thought he was a pending free agent. They're going to lose him no matter what. Now, that being said, if they cannot trade Vernon Adams Jr., I don't think cap-wise they're in a position to go and keep both either way, right? So
I don't think you're going to get a lot for him. Not in the CFL trading, right? Like, I mean,
not as much as they probably are hoping they will get for him. And I think Calgary has to be the ones to push it hardest to get him. I see them more needing a guy like him more than a young guy like a Davis Alexander that could be available. I think you try to bring in VA as your starter and let PJ Walker be the backup and let him adapt to the CFL game and then go from there is my play if I'm the Stamps. But 2 things that are going to get in their way. 1, Calgary doesn't typically spend up big time. And 2, is BC going to want to trade him to a team in the division, potentially?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, not for his sake, but just to get him as far away as possible. I'd trade him to the XFL if that was allowed.
I don't think it is.
But no, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think too, because there's where I want him to go, and even get my Bomber out of it for a second here. There's places where I want him to go. I don't think Calgary would be good for him personally. I think that's maybe Calgary would want him. I don't think he would succeed very much in Calgary, though, is my issue. But
yeah, Tim in the chat saying, remember VA has been traded twice for a first round pick in the Canadian draft. That is true. He has gained some solid return in past trades, and playing off the way he did earlier this year, maybe they can get another deal out of him. But I don't know. Everyone knows BC's in that desperation mode, I feel like right now.
I think the thing is, who in the East would want him? Because Montreal's got 2 guys they got to figure out. Toronto's got 2 or 3 guys they got to figure out. Ottawa's got 10 guys in their lineup that they could all do, and then the other one is Hamilton, which I mean, Bo looked good at times, and I don't know. I think they have a couple backups that could take over too, right? So who in the East would maybe want to even bring them in, because you're just making those quarterback rooms even more crowded.
Yeah, Hamilton, I guess, would be the leader if they want to move on from Bo. I see that not being a thing after them being the runner-up for MOP, or maybe Ottawa but you have to think they like what they saw from Drew Brown. Like, Ottawa's problems in the playoffs was their defense. Drew Brown lit it up. So, but yeah, that's the hottest topic for the Lions as we move into, I think we should move into talking about BC next, since we started talking about them here. Is the quarterback situation of they're gonna it's all but given Nathan Rourke is gonna be the one to stay, and I think he himself in exit press kind of said the same thing as well, that he's fully expecting to be there. He's got the 3-year contract. He's the young gun that they brought back. They believe in him. They're gonna make him the face of the franchise, and sadly Vernon Adams is gonna get cast off somewhere else again. But other big news for the Lions, who did go 9-9 this year, finished 3rd in the West Division, started strong at 4-1, 5-1. Then VA started to tail off. VA got injured. Then they really struggled for a while, and then kind of sputtered at the end of the season there. And Nathan Rourke didn't live up to the hype when he was brought back in. But a couple of questions, I guess, here. One, the big news out of BC, Rick Campbell fired as head coach after this season. That one was announced this week, and already there's been lots of rumors on who his replacement will be. Would it be, Mark Killam, who's available now and has been talked about as potential head coach? Buck Pierce has former ties to the BC Lions. A number of other candidates out there. I'll pose the question to you first here on BC. Should Rick Campbell have been fired by the Lions after the last couple of seasons? And any thoughts on a replacement?
Sure. I never know with coaching firing, man. I don't know how much. Sometimes it's too soon, and sometimes you lead with a guy. It's hard to say if a coach should be fired until we see what the new guy does. So I'll say sure. I think BC had higher expectations this year hosting the Grey Cup, having Nathan Rourke come back. Even if we didn't have Nathan Rourke coming in, VA was playing out of his mind earlier in the year. I think this team was a Grey Cup or bust, at least be in it this year, and they didn't even get to the West Finals, right? So I think that was a failure. So yeah, I guess you're going to put it on the coaching staff and stuff like that. Replacement, God, take Buck, get rid of it, just take him. But other than that,
all the fingers are crossed.
Well, I'm gonna be honest though, I don't think he's not even OC. So how the hell could he be a head coach? Unless we maybe get him away from play calling. But I mean, sorry, who was the other guy you said? Mike.
Mark Killam from Calgary, who was the Stamps let go. Been a number of different options discussed.
If you're not gonna go with those 2 guys, I would try to. We need new guys once in a while too. New coaching, it's the same. Every league's the same. Some guy goes 2-30, and then he gets a job somewhere else. I don't know. There's got to be a college coach or somewhere else to bring in some new faces. But I mean, I guess I would go Buck just because I don't know. I'm trying to think of guys or coaches across the league right now.
I've got a couple others here that I was just checking. I remember in our Discord community, our ever great Discord community, FM fan the other day, putting a couple of listing a number of candidates for head coach. Buck Pierce was one of them. Jordan Maximic is their current offensive coordinator in BC. Does he get a promotion? Mark Mueller, according to Farhan Lalji, the offensive coordinator for the Riders, I think this was his first year in that role. They've contacted him. I could see a scenario where Ryan Phillips, a defensive coordinator, former player for the Lions, maybe does he get a promotion into that kind of role? I think there are a number of other options out there. People throwing out Paul Appelese. I don't think Lapo's ever coming back into coaching. He's got such a good thing going on with the play-by-play and being on the TSN panel. He started up the YouTube channel, which everybody's loving so far. I don't see Lapo coming back into the game. Do you?
It's. I don't know. I want to say yeah, only because I feel like he's a coach. You know what I mean? Like his whole TSN thing is showing the coaching stuff. It's like Belichick. Belichick's on the panel for 1 year, and he's going to own the Cowboys next year, with Jerry Jones or something, right? So I don't know. He seems like a guy that I think it's hard for him to keep away from the coaching spot because that's who he is. But I can see it too. And I don't know what coaching salaries are, and I don't know what TSN salaries are. If coaching pays a hell of a lot more than TSN, and he's not an old guy, I'm sure he could coach for a few more years and TSN would take him back. And again, it depends on what pays more. And I'm assuming coaching would pay more. Maybe. I don't know. I'm assuming. But anyway, I don't know. I could see Lapo. Again, I don't know if he's a head coach. He's a great OC.
He's a great OC, but not a head coach.
I would take him in a second as our OC again. But yeah, head coach. Yeah. And we've all seen how that can go.
Another name I'll throw out, Jarius Jackson. I think he used to play for the Lions as well. He was Edmonton's head coach, but do they want to go in a different direction? We'll talk about them soon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was time. I can see why Rick Campbell left. I feel like the whole downfall of the Lions, I pinned part of it this year on just the dynamic didn't work with the quarterbacks once they brought Rourke in. They had to bring Rourke in, I think, for the longevity, the long term for the franchise. It just caused such a weird dynamic as much as they all said it didn't this year. I find that hard to believe, just seeing like the interactions between the players on the sideline, that, the VA Rourke crowded QB room, and they kind of switched back and forth a little bit in a couple of games there down the stretch. They gave VA the start, then they gave him the start in the. Did they give him the start in the playoffs? I think Vernon Adams started the playoff game. Yeah,
it's one of these situations. I almost hope VA goes and wins the Grey Cup next year wherever he is.
I will forever root for him wherever he plays.
Yeah, like I maybe off the field, I guess taking Rourke was the right choice. On the field, I think they should have passed. I think they should have stuck it with VA. And I could see the argument about the long term. But I think they made the wrong. In hindsight, it's always 2020. Watch me be wrong. Watch Rourke create the next dynasty in BC and, win 3 or 4 or 5 Grey Cups in a row, and I'm wrong. But yeah, he just, and we've all talked. He was a year off the field. He's just been doing training camps in the NFL. Did he look rough?
And moving 5 times.
Yeah, moving 5 times. I don't know. He looked rough out there. Like, it's crazy to say that Chris Streveler had a better NFL career than Nathan Rourke, man, but he did. And, I don't know. There's something. I think maybe Rourke had one good year. That's my word. Rourke had one good year. And everyone went off. The Canadian kid having one good year. And, that's my worry. So
I have that worry a little bit as well, but I fully expect him to bounce back next season. I think he'll be ready to bounce back because a big part of it was five different teams basically that he bounced around, 5 different cities he had to move between last year, and not getting a ton of action and learning all those different playbooks because he's trying to soak that up to land that spot. Like, that's a lot to go on in the year. It's been a busy year. He gets a full off season with the BC Lions. And it remains to be seen who the head coach option will be, of course, but and what the rest of the team around him looks like. But I have faith in a Rourke bounce back to at least some degree here. Interesting question that just came in here on YouTube. We'll pivot to that here. From Bill, do you think there will be relative parity across teams in the 2025 season like we had this year? It sure was interesting watching the standings throughout the season. I think there's always a good chance of parity, right? Like so many guys change places in the offseason every single year because everybody's on these shorter contracts that what we've seen from teams like Winnipeg the last few years of keeping the core together is a rather rare thing. So I guess that could go two directions, right? It could go one of everybody's going to change places and the parity is going to remain for another season, or it could throw everything off balance and we get back to some dominance across the CFL. But I don't know. I think we're finally starting to see more of a level playing field. And I liked what you said, I think last week, Trey, that you don't know if the East Division is the least division anymore.
I've been thinking about it. I think the beast in the East is back when Montreal had Calvillo and the Damon Allen years in Toronto and stuff like that. I think the East is where you want to be. And again, you have to think American players come up. Where do you want to go? Toronto, Montreal, or Regina or Winnipeg? You know what I mean? Like, so I think those teams have to benefit on that more than what they have. I'd say with BC, people take Vancouver over a lot of different places. But I think the parity is going to be there too, though, because again, looking at the East, which I think was a better division, only 5 wins from Hamilton to Montreal. You know, like those in CFL and football, 5 wins is how many of those were extra point or field goal games and things like that. The West was 6 games between Winnipeg and Calgary. Like, a 6-win difference, between Calgary and Winnipeg. Again, how many of those were field goals and touchdown games that could go either way? I think this is good for the league, a balanced league. I don't want to see 15-3 teams, honestly, because what's the point of the regular season then? If I'm kind of glad Montreal tailed off. I'm kind of glad, other than Saskatchewan was supposed to do 14-4 for me. But other than that, I'm glad these teams tailed off and we have some great fun. And I'm looking for next year. I think will be really good. I'm interested in next year. I think it might be. I think we're going to see some crazy shit next year. I have a feeling.
I like it. And like I said throughout the early season for Winnipeg, losing makes winning fun. So when there's parity and you don't just go to a game expecting to win every time, it makes it much more enjoyable when they do. We got a lot of teams to talk about here still, Trey. Let's jump to the East Division. What East team do you want to talk about?
Let's go to Ottawa.
All right. I think Ottawa is one of the most interesting ones to talk about here this offseason. Last 2 years, 4-win seasons, I want to think it was for Ottawa. Coming into this year, they made some free agent splashes. They brought in Drew Brown at quarterback, and they jumped out to a pretty strong start to the year. I forget what the record was, but they were firmly in that second playoff spot. They were challenging Montreal for first place in the East. And then the second half of the season just really, really struggled. Like a handful of games in a row where they were losing by double-digit points. I'll try to pull it up here, what it actually looked like for Ottawa, but it wasn't great down the stretch. It seemed like they couldn't get anything together. We had no faith in them going to that playoff game against the Argos. And rightfully so, because the Argos manhandled them in that game in the East semifinal. So a 9-8-1 season for Ottawa. I think we can agree there was finally some improvement this year. Like this was obviously the best Ottawa team we've seen in a while, and there were some good pieces we saw this year, but they had that disastrous finish. So If you're the Red Blacks going into this offseason, what's the key here? How do you take that next step? And I guess thoughts from you on Ottawa's season as a whole coming into this.
I'll start with the season as a whole. I'll give it a win if you want to count it like a win or loss season. Like we had Calgary and BC were losses, but I give Ottawa the win. Like you said, they had massive improvements. The way they've been playing, they've kind of been that team that's been on the bottom for too long, and they doubled their win total, doubled their win total. They got some talent in Devontae Dedmon, Addison. They actually finally have a quarterback or 2 or 3 or 4. They got a lot of talent coming in, and I liked what we saw out of Pimpleton and some younger guys. Yep. I think they should have. I mean, they had Armstead for a while, right, until they let him go, and they had some improvements there. I think they just need some more stability in quarterback, that being either giving Drew Brown a whole other season of prep. I think it's Mazzoli. I mean, gosh, I feel for the guy. He's one of those guys that was great in this league too, but just keeps getting hurt. Is it Dustin Crum? Whatever they do, I think they just got to get a little bit more consistency in that quarterback area. And I think a lot of and maybe the O-line, because the O-line and the quarterback kind of goes hand in hand. I don't mind their O-line on paper. I just feel like at times it wasn't quite there. But we could say that about a lot of teams in the league. So I think that's it, quarterback.
So what direction would you go if you're a quarterback? Are you playing in the quarterback market at all if you're the Red Blacks here? I know Adam, interestingly, couldn't be here this evening. He wasn't feeling well. Hope you feel better soon, Adam. Had put his percentage chances in the Discord community of where I think it was Vernon Adams would land. He actually had Ottawa kind of high up on the list based on maybe not trusting Drew Brown. Do you think they go that direction potentially or look for another one? I'm kind of in the camp that they give Brown another year. I think he had such a promising finish to the year. You look at his stats on the season, just under 4,000 passing yards in 17 games, 18 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He lit it up in garbage time. Yes, it was garbage time, but he lit it up in that playoff game and a couple big games down the stretch. For first year as a starter, I can't ask for much more. So I'm in the camp of you give Drew Brown another year. What do you think?
No, I agree completely. I think you have to give him another year. And just looking at something interesting in 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They have 12 guys over 30 or over on their roster, which I'm not going to count everyone. I feel like that's low. Or, actually looking at their injured list, they have a few more because they still have their injured list. But still, they have a pretty young team. Pimpleton's 24. They got a lot of guys who are pretty young. Dustin Crum's only 25. Drew Brown's only 27. Desjardins only 27. These guys this is a pretty young team. So I think you got to give them another year. And if you want to, I'm sure VA will want to maybe sign with whatever team trades him, but maybe he doesn't, and he's a free agent again next year. And maybe he doesn't. Maybe he does go to Calgary and doesn't want to stay there next year, or some other team, right? Or he gets put into another team that has a crowded quarterback room, and that's when I think Ottawa would look for more of that. I think you run with Drew Brown and Crum and see how that goes.
Yeah, I think we just have to let the young talent grow. Like Drew Brown spent his years as a backup behind a veteran, and if he's going to be part of the future talent at quarterback in the CFL, bringing in a guy like Vernon Adams is going to do the trick. Interesting name I'll throw out, and potentially do you bring a guy like McLeod Bethel-Thompson as a backup to him as an upgrade over Vernon Adams. Granted, MBT and his comments on the CFL and the number of times he got fined this year, I don't know if I'm bringing that necessarily in the locker room in a backup role at this point in his career. I could see MBT being not signed by a CFL team this offseason, potentially.
Nah, he can go be the first overall pick in the UFL expansion draft, or something like that. So, yeah, I've never been an MBT fan. He just always seemed a little, like those comments, and I don't know. I think I wonder how much of that we'll get to Edmonton caused maybe their issues too, where he might be a guy. Hey, you signed me, you play me. I don't want I'm not sitting on the bench. I could go back to Atlanta if you're going to put me on the bench here. So I wonder how that would play. No, I think Ottawa. If I'm going with the veteran for Ottawa, I wouldn't go with Bethel-Thompson necessarily. I would go with.
You bring Arbuckle back for another round.
Well, but I think the way Arbuckle played, he might want a starting gig. If I just won the Grey Cup and I won MOP of the Grey Cup, why am I going to go play backup?
I don't see a scenario. I don't think there's enough starting jobs out there that Arbuckle off of
fair, but that's my thought. Why would I go play backup? Unless he has a confidence, I'm going to go beat Drew Brown for the starting job. Like if they played it that way, sure, maybe. But I mean that's a lot of depend on Toronto. I guess we're assuming they're going with Kelly and Duke's kind of situation. So
actually, Mike in the Facebook chat says trade Kelly. I can tell you that is not going to happen. 100%. Yeah, I think they stick with Drew Brown. We can have obviously that conversation. Is Jake Mayer potentially a backup guy, right? That moves more into a backup role. We can have that conversation throughout the offseason, what they do there, whether they bring back Mazzoli again. The only other note I have on the Red Blacks that I think they need to figure out is what the heck they're doing at the running back position. You mentioned Armstead. He had some attitude issues. He got kicked out of a game or two, so they cut him, and then he immediately went to the Riders and rushed for 200 yards in a game and was a focal point of that offense down the stretch. I believe after he went down, well, they had Dedmon play running back a bit this year, but then he got injured. Then they brought in Kalen Laborn. I thought he looked not too bad, but then they put him on the practice roster at the end of the season. And for the playoff game, it was wide receiver Braylon Addison, who was their starting running back. And it worked out kind of well because he played very good, but they just kind of decided, we're not going to run the ball. We're just going to start another receiver at the running back position. I don't know if that works long term. Like, this is a league where I think you need to be a little more pass heavy. And less importance on a massive run game, but I still think you need some run game there. And I don't know. Addison does do good when he's carrying the ball a little bit, but he's also getting up there. He's in terms of veteranness in the CFL. So I want to see what Ottawa does at the running back position this year. That's what I've got my eye on.
And just talk about their practice squad. They have an interesting practice squad. Yeah, they got Khalil Laborn. And then they also have Maurice French, who played on Edmonton. And I thought he had a few good games in Edmonton. Yeah, and they got Rasheed Bailey.
What happened? Rasheed Bailey was the Argos' leading receiver through 5 weeks. Gets cut, cap casualty most likely. Ottawa picks him up, and he never plays in a game despite all of the injuries down the stretch.
I don't know, because it was so bad. I was right before the last playoff game. I was trying to think of his name while talking to my buddy, and I couldn't think of his name, and I felt so bad. I had that blank moment. I don't know. Like, he was doing great in Toronto. He was like the only guy they had for the first few weeks of the season, and then gets cut. Everyone thought he might come back to Winnipeg because we had all the injuries, but I think Ottawa. I think Ottawa's in a good position if he's on your practice squad, right now, and you give him a full off season. Maurice French is some good talent. We just talked about Laborn. They have a pretty good defense. I like their defense, and Ottawa can show up at times. And then, you give your quarterback, whoever it is, Crum or Drew Brown, they're pretty young guys, a full training camp. And, even though 2 guys, I think that's your 1-2. And you just say, maybe secretly you have a starter, but you tell them, hey, it's open, and let them ball out in training camp. I think Ottawa's looking good next year.
Let's flip to a team a bit in another category in the East Division. Let's go to the defending Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts. We were talking a little bit in our post-game show on Sunday about, is Toronto the next dynasty? Because if they win next year, that's 3 and 4 years for them. They've won 2 of the last 3. I remember also finding out or realizing after scrolling social media, I forget from where, that they've now won 3 of the last 6 because they won back in 18 or 19 as well. So Toronto's been playing some pretty good football within the last decade here.
8 straight wins in the game in the Grey Cup too, or something stupid.
They've never lost to Winnipeg. So, the major question I think is, can they repeat and complete the dynasty, and what tinkering needs to happen to do so? And I don't know what the answer is here, because the Argos were a team I didn't really trust a whole ton down the stretch of the season. It felt like they were trending in the right direction and gaining that momentum with Chad Kelly back at quarterback, where he was able to put up some of those big games, but how much of it? There were a couple against Ottawa who just really fell off the face of the earth late in the season, or a couple against Montreal who struggled down the stretch. How much of that was Toronto good versus those teams bad? How much were those teams bad because they faced Toronto who's good? Still trying to kind of get that picture all together for the Argos. They seem still like a very well-rounded team to me if they can keep things together. I thought there were some flaws on defense a little bit, where we saw Drew Brown have some of those big games to light them up. But then you see what some of those guys did in the Grey Cup. We look at guys like Benji Franklin, whose name I didn't know a whole ton, but I surely know now after the Grey Cup game because he was mentioned over and over. You got guys like McManus in the middle there. That defensive line is stellar. I don't know. I'm having a hard time picturing what Toronto needs to do to tinker here, or is it as simple as they just need to bring it back as much as they can?
I feel like I got something Mike said stuck in my head about the Bombers. I feel like he said this. Maybe I'm wrong. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I feel like he must have said that after one off-season show about the Bombers. So same about the Argos. Why fix it? What's wrong? I think the only issue I had with Toronto in this playoffs was there was one or two plays in the East Finals where Kelly did that like old college, just throw it up in the air, pray kind of thing that you see in the NCAA happen all the time, where you can't do in pro football and CFL or NFL. Other than that, and you know, I mean, if a team is poised to have your backup at the beginning, in any other situation, could be your third stringer, because Cam Dukes literally started the year. So you could look at Arbuckle as the third stringer or fourth stringer. He wasn't even on the team, right, for a while. If your team is set up where that guy can come in and still win after he wasn't going to renew his visa and everything, I think your team's pretty damn good. You know, because again, no comparison to that Bomber team from decades ago, the team wasn't that good. The team wasn't that good enough to carry Dinwiddie to a game. Now, also Dinwiddie, that was his first actual start. Arbuckle knows what he's doing in the CFL.
Yeah, a bit different.
But you know, hey, Dinwiddie sure knows what he's doing now, coaching on the sideline and knowing how to pump. Did you see that story about the coin? He left the coin in the locker room and said we're picking it back up after in the Grey Cup.
No.
Oh, yeah, I just saw that on Twitter today that he won their last game in BC. He left the coin or something hiding in the locker room and said, we're going to come get this when we win the cup. And then there's something dumb like that. And I'm like, okay, like he seems to have this locker room. I think you're right. Every team has that where they have some bad games. That defense was terrifying. There's no way it should have been a 10.5 point game ever, even with Kelly out or not. And I think the biggest issue is, what do you do in your quarterbacks? You had Cam Dukes, who, you know, he had moments too early in the year. You got Chad Kelly. He's the guy on paper. You know,
the question is going to be, is Kelly ready for the start of the year, right?
I
think the last timeline we saw was 3 to 6 months, which by my calculation would put him ready for the start of training camp. But I could see a scenario where he misses a bit of time. But they dealt with that this year.
That's what I mean. Did you just roll with it? Do you go with Dukes? Do you go with Arbuckle? I think that's the only thing I want to worry about is I don't think you can have all three guys in salary cap era. And depending on contracts, does Arbuckle get paid now for winning? Does Dukes think he's a starter? You can have all these arguments, right? And we're talking about guys like, is there going to be starting gigs? Like, we don't think there is a starting gig for guys like some guys. So where are these guys going? But other than that, I wouldn't touch heck of a lot. The last three games, what did Montreal, Ottawa, and Winnipeg really do to this team? Not much. No. They didn't do much, right? So why change it?
Yeah, I'm looking at their free agent list on 3 Down Nation. They got a lot of defensive players. So like most of the biggest names on defense are free agents. So it'll be a question mark of how many of those guys can they bring back / what tinkering do they do. It's impressive. Again, I'll say that they ran it back, ran it to the Grey Cup and won the Grey Cup based off all of the turnover they went through in the offseason of just being, you know, decimated on defense there. And could it happen again? Yeah, potentially so this year. Offense, not that many on the free agent list. Most intriguing to me is Kadeem Carey at running back. Great year for Carey this year. I thought he was fantastic. But do they bring him back again versus you've still got McMahon, you've still got Adebaboye? Are you going to run the 3-headed monster again at running back this year? It kind of worked for them to rotate all 3 of those guys in. So I think if they make the money work, that works. And at receiver, only 2 guys actually free agents, Coxie and Janarian Grant, who I think are both focal points of trying to bring back, if you can bring back the offensive pieces. Yeah. But pretty exciting to see Mackay Polk, who is definitely the most exciting young piece of that Argos offense, is under contract for another year.
No, I think this is an interesting thing because it's very similar to what's had in Winnipeg. You're going to have to pick and choose. There's a guy like Janarian Grant kind of on the chopping block again, you know, because he's won special teams. And then that's interesting. Those two quarterbacks are contract stuff. I think they're only keeping Arbuckle or Dukes. They're not keeping both, I don't think.
I don't know.
Unless Kelly has – the only reason I would try to keep both is if Kelly's really not going to be back early in the season. If he's not back till like August, September, maybe you try to keep both guys, so then you have that backup for most of the year. Kadeem Carey, I think you have to get him back or something too. I hate that the running back position's kind of not looked at as important, but it is super important because what teams were in the Grey Cup? The two with the two best running backs. Right.
That's fair. That's a fair point for sure. So we'll see how the Argos tinker as we move on to our next team here. Let's go back to the West. Edmonton, Saskatchewan, or Winnipeg. Where you want to go next?
Well, let's go to Edmonton because we kind of touched on MBT, and I'm interested in that one with Trey Ford and their coaching carousel, which could be going on too here. Or no, G-Roy's out. Was that GM?
G-Roy Simon is out as GM, I believe. Ed Hervey is back in Edmonton once again, taking over the GM role here for them. That was announced this week. Edmonton finished the season 7-11, fourth in the West Division. They had some hype around them in the offseason again. McLeod Bethel Thompson coming in, that trade for Curly Gittins Jr., a couple of other moves there in the offseason, a lot of hype. Disastrous start to the year where they couldn't win again. They put Trey Ford in. Surprise, they started winning. Trey Ford got injured. Bethel Thompson still won a couple of games. And then it was a dumpster fire in the second half of the season of not knowing who to start in which game and not winning games until they were out of the playoff race. And then they gave the ball to Trey Ford at the end and surprise, they won games again. It's almost like the last 2 years have given us plenty of data to know who the right decision is at quarterback for the Elks. But they did let go of Chris Jones mid-season, GM and head coach as well. That was notable. G-Roy Simon took over in the full GM role. Jarius Jackson took over the head coaching role. And now the Elks are bringing Ed Hervey in. They're not giving Simon this next year to take on the full GM role there. And remains to be seen if Jarius Jackson gets brought back. I think I've read that he's going to be in consideration, of course, but not immediately given the job. So thoughts on the move here to bring Ed Hervey back to Edmonton once again? And what direction do you think this switch takes the Elks this offseason?
Well, I wonder how much it is because this is going to be the first offseason they have their ownership, right? They're no longer they're going from the public to the new owner. And I wonder, again, the new owner seems to want to bring back some nostalgia via the name and logo and stuff. So I wonder if that kind of maybe played into the Ed Hervey coming back a little bit, bring back some of the old days to Edmonton. But the right decision, I think, would be again, I got to keep my bomber out of it because I want Trey Ford. I think Trey Ford's the right decision. Now, why have they not done that over 2 years? The last 2 years, I don't know. And again, let's see what's their upcoming free agency like, because I wonder too, is MBT a free agent?
I'll look it up.
Yeah, you look it up because I'm not too.
I will say quick shout out to all the folks at 3 Down Nation who put together all of these lists and everything every year that make it possible for us to discuss these things. All three-quarter or McLeod Bethel Thompson, Trey Ford, Dakota Prukop, all free agents.
Yeah, I think you got to go. I mean, Prukop, whatever, but I think you got to get Trey Ford in there back because I think you got to pay for him. Just pay for him. This is your guy. He's your Nathan Rourke. You rally around him. You sell jerseys around him. Try to get a Grey Cup win in Edmonton with him, and he's your McDavid, and you push it as hard as you can, right?
Yeah, I could see a scenario, though, where none of these guys are the answer, right? Because Ed Hervey coming in, fresh face, maybe has seen, from afar what the past couple of years have gone for Edmonton and just wants to start from scratch with guys that he wants and guys that he likes. I could see that being a possibility. And I don't think we can rule out a guy like Vernon Adams Jr. from being the one as a starting quarterback for the Elks this year if BC was willing to trade him. out to Edmonton because maybe he comes in and sees, hey, has seen everything VA has done and says he wants a guy that he knows can make an impact. We know Trey Ford can make an impact based on the record, but there's still going to be so many people that doubt him because he's not a premium upper echelon passer in the CFL. He's an exciting, explosive player that can take off and run and make big plays, but maybe still needs to settle down a little bit at times as a passer. And I think that maybe is part of the perception of if this team is coming to try to build a winner, and try to get people back into the stands in Edmonton, a franchise that has been losing folks in the stands lately. I could see a scenario where they do push hard for Vernon Adams. I think it's the wrong move. I think you do make Trey Ford the guy, like you were saying. And I'm interested to know what other impacts the addition of Hervey, the re-edition of him, has on the Elks roster as a whole coming into this year.
Yeah, but I also just thought, where does Trey Ford? Does he want to stay in Edmonton? After
that's a big question too, right?
Like, maybe he will go and not take significant, but maybe he will take less money somewhere else just for the fresh start, or somewhere else. But I also think he doesn't want to get into a situation where he's in the same situation. So where's the city? What team needs a starting quarterback today? Not many. So we were just talking, like, none of the teams we've talked about needs a starting quarterback today, and the only one I think needs a new starting quarterback is going to die on the sword of Zach Collaros. So and
we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that.
So maybe Hamilton, maybe, but we talk. I really want to see Baby Tua, but maybe he'll never actually get started. But I mean, I don't know. There's no team I think really needs a starting quarterback. Maybe Saskatchewan if Harris doesn't want to come back, or I don't know, but yeah, I don't know where Trey Ford's going to go. That's not the same situation he's in now, or has been.
There's a number of big names across the board to watch for Edmonton as well. I think most intriguing is Eugene Lewis at wide receiver as well. He said something on social media at the end of the season or in his season wrap-up media availability. I think he said he wants to go somewhere where he's appreciated, or wants to be somewhere he's appreciated, not just tolerated. And I mean, the timing of it kind of makes it seem like he didn't feel that way in Edmonton. So could we see Eugene Lewis, one of the top pass catchers in the game? He had a scorching hot end to the year with like 8 straight games with a touchdown as well. He's still one of the top players in the league. Could be a big name available. Surprised at all that they didn't run it back for another year with G. Roy and Jarius in the GM and head coaching duo after they took over kind of midway through the season from Chris Jones?
Only because, again, maybe it's ownership and he wanted to make the pick, right? That's my only thought. Start fresh. And maybe we won't see any of those quarterbacks in. Maybe he wants to start fresh and get a guy like VA in, too, right? So we'll see. I'm very interested because, again, I'm curious what they're going to do because, like, again, the owner's trying to push back this double E logo and bring back the nostalgia. So maybe there will be a complete, facelift on this team in every aspect.
Well, let's flip back over to the East Division now, and we'll continue the quarterback talk. There was a lot of quarterback talk. One of the questions we did get this week was from Richard in the Discord, asking us who's going to be the starting quarterback for each team in week 1 and at the end of the season. And I think we're kind of answering that for the most part with most of these teams as we go through it. But one of the most intriguing ones that's come up more and more lately is the Montreal Alouettes, because I don't think it's a given that Cody Fajardo is going to be the man in Montreal this next season. Davis Alexander came in this year. He's been on the bench for a little while with the team. He won 4 or 5 starts. Fajardo is under contract right now, but a contract, I mean, you can cut a guy in the CFL. I don't think Fajardo has guaranteed money on his deal with the Alouettes, and Davis Alexander is a free agent. If you can only keep one, because I think it will be kind of difficult to keep both of them, what are you doing with Montreal? Are you going with the veteran Fajardo and trying to continue the momentum that's brought you back to the East Final and beyond 2 years in a row, or are you going with the young, fresh face in Davis Alexander?
First of all, I'm shocked this even came up. I didn't think about it this way, but I guess you go with Alexander because you go with the younger guy who looked a little bit hotter down the stretch. And when he was playing for, I don't know, I guess you go with Alexander over Fajardo, which I hate to say, but that's where I would go.
Yeah, Davis Alexander this year, well, I can't see how many games. I think he started like 4 or 5, but 1,347 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, also 166 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. Cody Fajardo is 6 years older. He's 32. Alexander is 26. Fajardo, 14 games, 3,100 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. 277 and 3 on the ground. So, yeah, it's tough. Like, Cody, I see a scenario where somehow after playing some of the best football of his career, that Cody Fajardo doesn't have a starting job next season.
That's wild.
Which is crazy. And I feel like that's been constantly in the conversation with him over the last couple of years because there aren't a ton of other places needing a starter. I don't see him being a guy wanting to stick around as a backup. Is it fair to compare this to the Zach Collaros Drew Brown decision from last offseason in Winnipeg?
Yeah, 100%. And I think Montreal's going to make the right choice, which Winnipeg didn't. But yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. My heart says you got to keep Fajardo. He's come in and done it, but that's not the right football move. I guess the right football move is, like we said, you take Oliveira over Harris. You could have taken Drew Brown over Collaros. You should take Trey Ford over MBT. I guess you take Rourke over VA. You should take the younger guy that has more potential of a ceiling. And I guess Alexander is that. Fajardo, we know who Fajardo is. I don't think he's going to get exceptionally better. He's a good football quarterback in the CFL. Alexander, I think any quarterback you don't really know, the sky's the limit, right? And you take the young guy who probably could take more hits. And so everyone's got a Fajardo jersey. Not everyone's got an Alexander jersey too, right? So there's some business decisions to make.
I do wonder, I forgot to mention their record and stuff. 12-5-1 season for Montreal. Torrid start to the year, 8 straight wins.
Like that, yeah.
Going back to the year before, didn't they have like 16 or 17 straight wins? Because they ran it back from September onwards last season in 2023. But now, Montreal, great start to the year. Cody Fajardo goes down. They lose that one to Toronto when he goes down, but then Alexander comes in, plays pretty well in his next handful of starts. And then I feel like it was when Fajardo came back from the injury and took back over that Montreal just didn't look the same. They looked sluggish down the stretch. They did lose some key players due to injury, like Tyson Philpott was having a fantastic start to the year, and then he was out for the season. That's a rough one there. But I wonder in hindsight, and there was no way they were going to do this, but what if they stuck with Alexander the entire stretch of the season, right, and kept going with the hot hand? Would that have changed things? I don't think so. I don't know. Montreal just seemed to lose steam down the stretch. And I think they have all of the pieces within the team to be successful and to be a leader in the East Division once again. They're a team that'll probably be competitive, but they're going to have to make some tough choices. And this quarterback choice is most definitely one of them. Yeah, and Tim puts in the chat, we found out Cody fractured his ribs against Ottawa. Yeah, that plays a solid role in it as well, right? Of all of the injuries, that would explain at least partially, if not a great portion of why you didn't quite see the same down the stretch. So I could see them going either direction here, honestly. I could see Cody Fajardo being brought back for another year, and he would deservingly be so. And if he does go somewhere else, I think Davis Alexander is the current backup that I'm most excited to see sign with another team. Probably more than Trey Ford, and almost I would almost put Alexander, my hype for him, higher than I'd put it for a team getting Vernon Adams or Trey Ford this year, because I think you're getting a better long-term play in Davis Alexander. Granted, it's a small sample size.
I like it. Well,
yeah.
I know who you're taking in fantasy early next year.
Oh, of course. I got to get back into the win column the next year somehow. So I'm coming for you, Adam. Scott in the YouTube chat says, get Arbuckle to back up Zach next year, but I bet he comes cheaper than Strevler. Do we want to dive into the Winnipeg of it all now, or do you want to save Winnipeg for the end?
I was trying to save Winnipeg to the end, but
all right.
We can answer that. Because,
we can come back to Winnipeg later on. That's fine. Tim, one of the hosts of the Alouettes Flight Deck. So, he's far more knowledgeable on the Alouettes than us. Go check out their podcast. Says, in his opinion, Cody Fajardo traded Alexander signed to a multiple-year contract. Hey, I would be all for it. Big Davis Alexander fan over here. And I guess we'll see then if that's the case, who gets more of a net return, Cody Fajardo or Vernon Adams Jr. Two big quarterback trades would be rather interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Hamilton, Saskatchewan, Winnipeg. If you want to save Winnipeg, because I think that's our most intriguing topic for the end. You want to go to Hamilton or Saskatchewan next?
Let's go Hamilton, then we'll leave. Adam's not here, but we'll do the local podcast teams last.
Sounds good. The Hamilton Tiger Cats, a terrible start for the year for them. Everything seemed to except Bo Levi Mitchell was on a pretty good pace. Hamilton was losing a lot of games. Things weren't working out. And I guess Scott Milanovich decided that it was Bo's fault, even though it was the defense's fault. And the special teams, I think they at least let go of their special teams coordinator. Did they fire the defensive coordinator? Yeah, they did. Did they fire the defensive coordinator, or did Chris Jones just come in to consult? I can't remember.
He just came in to consult. He just came in to consult for free, remember?
He did, but for some reason...
What did he get?
Oh, they did. Okay, they fired Mark Washington. They brought Chris Jones in, but didn't pay him, so he was a defensive consultant on the stretch. So, yeah, special teams, defense, disasters early in the season. Offense is playing a lot of catch-up, and Bo's numbers may or may not have been inflated as a result. But the resurgence of Bo Levi Mitchell, so much to the point where he was a finalist for most outstanding player and the best quarterback in the CFL this season. And everything changed when they said, here, Chris Jones, sign this contract that pays you $0 for the rest of the season because the defense was good from there on out. The offense got on a bit of a roll down the stretch. And they finished the season 7-11, and we got very excited, and there was a lot of hype that maybe they could make that late push for the playoffs, but it did not happen. They finished last place in the East Division. Terrible start, but strong finish. The exact opposite of the Ottawa Red Blacks. What does the offseason ahead look like for Hamilton? Is it quiet or busy?
Well, it should be busy, and just looking at an article where Bo said he'll play, but not under his current contract, which he's not. I think his contract's not up. I think it'd be interesting because they have running backs that are up, Litre and Butler. Butler's never utilized very well.
Butler's not. I see no chance he goes back to Hamilton. He's going to go as a free agent. Greg Bell is under contract.
Oh, yeah.
And he was proven to be the guy this year.
And they got some receivers, Dunbar, O'Leary Orange, Condre Smith up. I think they got to be busy but first of all, they got to figure out what are they doing. Is it Bo? Is it Powell? Or do they go with a little Tua? I like calling him that. I just wish he threw left. That would be sick. But anyway, I want to know which way they go, and I think they got to make that decision rather fast because if they want to go with Bo, it sounds like he wants to renegotiate his contract. And if they go with Powell, he looks like he's still got another year on his contract. So is it more team friendly where you can put these pieces in? You get rid of maybe Bo off the books if he retires, or you cut him or whatever. And I think you go from there and you shore up your positions. They've had some great pieces this year. Like we said, Keandre Smith was pretty good on the receiving core. Who's their other guy? I had
Shamar Bridges, Tim White.
Bridges. They have some really good moments here, and I think. I wondered too when Mr. Turtleneck's going to get the official nod as DC in Hamilton if he is, and he's another guy. He's one of those guys that he always wants to be GM, head coach wherever he goes. I think he's better at a DC. Maybe his ego doesn't tell him that, but if he's a DC in Hamilton, I think Hamilton's another team that they'll go back to their old ways of having a very tight defense and. Again, probably could add 3-4 wins next year.
Hamilton doesn't have a ton of free agents. Their free
Oh,
agent list is actually pretty small, and I think they've actually done a decent job of with those attempts for the cup in 19 and 21, like they got old, right? And we
yeah.
saw a lot of those pieces retire on defense. I think they've actually brought in a good amount of talent without where this year, there isn't a whole ton of turnover here for them potentially. I'm high on how Hamilton finished the season. I think they finished it really strong. Bill in the chat says the change in defensive coordinator improved the team immensely. I agree it has to be Bo in 2025. I don't see how you go a different direction off of the way he played. What does the number on the contract for next year look like for Bo if he gets a new deal in Hamilton? Because he's now played with the Ticats for 2 years, came in the first year with, I want to say, like a $500,000 contract. That didn't work out. This last year, I think he was paid under $200,000 for the season. It's got to be somewhere in the middle, right?
It's okay. The 3 Down Nation says his contract was $522 and it was slashed to $225.
Okay, so close.
And then, but he had to up to another 120,000 of playtime incentives, which I wonder if he hit. Yeah, this year he could hit a max of 411,000 with only 275,000, which is hard money. So I mean, 400,000 is not too bad. That's where I
could see him getting up there. Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe his thing is he wants that more guaranteed, and that's a lot of show me money again, where he feels like a starter. And a starter of his caliber shouldn't be. If you can get him around 400,000, I take that. The only reason why I wouldn't keep him, again, is if you look at, we're looking at their lack of expiring contracts, wonder what their salary cap looks like. And maybe if you do want to fit another couple pieces in, is someone like Powell and Tuaganluva, they're like minimal contracts. Does that help out bringing in more pieces? That's the only reason I wouldn't keep him. Because we see that in every sport. When you get the hot young quarterback on the rookie deal, that's your chance. The teams that have 500, 600, 700,000 in the CFL locked up in their quarterback, you're probably not doing too good. You're probably not. But we'll.
Intriguingly, it's been 3 years in a row where, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the CFL has been on a cheap deal. And Bo is a weird scenario with that because we know Bo coming in, but Nathan Rourke, super cheap deal, lit it up for the Lions. Chad Kelly, super cheap deal, won MOP with the Argos. Bo Levi Mitchell was a finalist off of a super cheap deal. To me, the key at quarterback is to pay as little as possible, as unconventional as that is for your starter, and spend all that money on the pieces around him. So I think you make an interesting point in that regard. But I do think Bo comes back. I think they get a deal done. I think they have a lot of bright young pieces to build around. I'm so excited for that offense. If Bo is at quarterback, together with Greg Bell at running back, who's top running back this year, in my opinion, in the games he played. All of those young receivers. Keandre Smith is a free agent. Stephen Dunbar is a free agent. So those are pieces you're going to look to lock up. Again, they don't have a ton to lock up. And if that defense can be improved, then I think the sky's the limit for this team. And I was actually looking this week that the Grey Cup odds for 2025 have started to trickle out on some sites. And specifically, I'm looking at on CoolBet here. I use decimal odds, so I don't know what it is, but a 13.5 decimal odd. So pay $1, get $13.50 payout on the Ticats, the third lowest odds. I'm high on the Ticats to the point where I'm gonna call it right now as my early before anything happens this offseason that Hamilton's breaking the streak next year in Winnipeg. I'm high on them, especially at such high odds where it doesn't seem like the books and doesn't seem like people believe in them for reasons based on how they were this year. But I think if they can not do much, tinker a little bit this offseason, they're going to be highly competitive in that East Division with the other teams.
You know what? Yeah, looking at it, I hate that you beat me to it. That probably would be my pick too, based off of odds and changing things. And like I said, if if Chris Jones is the DC, I'm assuming he's going to be the DC next year.
I would think so.
Yeah. And then looking at the odds, Argos, Montreal, Winnipeg, BC, Saskatchewan. I don't think there's any value. Ottawa too doesn't really have any value if you're looking at their odds. If you want to look at the value versus kind of like how I've looked with Saskatchewan and Montreal the last 2 years, yeah, Hamilton would be my top choice for potential weighting with a payout. That's crazy. Yeah, I like that. I didn't even know those were out. Thank you. That's good. I'm not going to go to bed now tonight, Ryan. So,
I was surprised they came out so early as well. Another question in the chat: what do you speculate about Edmonton as they perpetually underachieved this year? If you go back, I want to say 20 minutes, half an hour ago, we did go through the Elks, talked a bit about some of the decisions facing them this offseason. So I recommend going back and checking that out. But I think it's hard to speculate on what Edmonton will look like and how they will perform, because we get hyped up for them every offseason and the moves they make, and then it just doesn't translate on the field early in the season. So what I think about them based on moves they make now and on paper, I'm still going to be a little degree skeptical of them when I do my rankings preseason, is probably how I will feel about Edmonton at the time. All right, the two Prairie teams are left. Long show here tonight. Lots to talk about. A long season to wrap up, so buckle in, because we've got two more teams to talk about here. Let's start with Saskatchewan. More quarterback talk, because I think that is the biggest question we're probably talking about with the Riders right now. Which is, Saskatchewan, you picked them 14-4. That was the big 14-4 season. And I hated that it was looking like you were right early in the season when they started the season 5-0. There's nothing more that I hate than when Trey is right, because he'll never let us forget it.
You love me.
Of course, I do. Always. Started strong, and then much like half the teams we've talked about, at some point in the year, the wheels fell off the cart and the train was derailed, and they finished the year 9-8-1, kind of fell off in the middle, but came on strong at the end. We were high on them going to the playoffs. They beat BC in the first round, but they just could not get it done against the Bombers and looked way overpowered in that West final. Saskatchewan just can't, same thing for Saskatchewan, same thing for BC. Two teams that have been good the last little while. Well, I guess the last couple of years were bad for Saskatchewan, but have had their moments and just can't get past the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Thoughts on the Riders and the biggest question surrounding them, I guess, do they run it another year with Trevor Harris at quarterback, or do they be active in the quarterback market?
I've never felt Harris was the guy there. He's always, something's been off with. He's not a guy I look at that can go and lead that team. Like in the grand scheme of things, I would have kept Fajardo over him. Like, I think Fajardo. Frick, I hate to say it, does Fajardo go back to Saskatchewan? I don't know. Like, that ship has sailed. I don't know.
I would say that bridge. I think burned, but I would say that bridge was burned. But at the same time, like, he did sign together with Jason Maas in Montreal after all of the chaos of the two together in Saskatchewan. So anything's possible.
Yeah. See, and again, I hate it, but that's the last place I want VA to go. I just feel like that environment and overall is turning kind of toxic right now. I'm scared they're going to be Calgary is in a couple of years, because again, they're not changing things the right way. They moved on from their guy. They tried to replace him. They tried to get a running back in who you would think should be is there anyone more Saskatchewan looking than AJ Ouellette? Probably not.
What do you make of, did you happen to see the social media post, I think it was, from AJ Ouellette that kind of made it seem like potentially he's retiring?
Yeah, me and Adam were talking about that. I read it as he's saying goodbye for the year because he's going back to doing another job in the offseason. That's the way I read it. What did I say? Yeah, that's Louisiana grammar for you. And now a guy that lives in Regina. probably spec in English isn't his number one priority. That's why I took it, because I didn't think he did it. When he played, he had his moments too. I mean, it took him a while to get started, but I was in that West final between him and Armstead. I was worried you have the two different kinds of running backs in your backfield, and that's ideally what you want. You want the guy who, the power back who can run over guys for 3, 4, 5 yards, and then you want I call him the scat back, or the agility guy, which is Armstead, right? And I think that's the tandem you want to have back there, again, if it fits under your salary cap. I wonder if Saskatchewan's, I don't know. I'm worried about guys like Verdon Adams and Trey Ford going to Saskatchewan, just because I'm a little bit worried that environment's going to get a little pitchfork and torchy in the next couple of years, if not already. I wish we had Adam here. He could probably get a little sense of it more. I want Saskatchewan to do good, because I think the league thrives when the Prairie teams are on TV, but are doing well. I think, again, it just comes down to quarterback. You have to make that decision. Are we going to go with Harris and push things there? Are we going to go for Trey Ford? Is his contract up? I don't even know. I'm assuming he's under contract.
Who? Sorry,
Harris.
Trevor Harris and Shea Patterson are both free agents. So the Riders are currently need to make some decision, obviously.
Then yeah, I guess when Hickson and Armstead are both up too. I would look. Oh, and their offensive line's pretty open. Zer's up. They got a lot of free agents.
They do.
Oh man, I guess that means they have a lot of open salary cap. If I'm Saskatchewan, I'm the ones keeping an eye on Trey Ford, Verdon Adams, Cody Fajardo if he wants to come back, Cam Duke / Arbuckle. Maybe Saskatchewan is the one that has the most. I didn't know. I thought maybe he had another year left, Harris. So I wasn't sure if that would be a landing spot for one of these quarterbacks. But maybe this is the place that a guy like VA will be the day one starter.
Yeah, well, Harris is at 38 years old, I think it is now, or something like that. So you start to wonder, is he hanging it up this offseason?
Yeah.
How many years is he coming back? Does that make their decision to go one way or another easier? Would I have faith in Shea Patterson to be brought back as the starter? I thought he showed flashes and looked better than I expected him to at times last season. But I think with some of the other juicy options out there available, that I would probably pursue those over Shea Patterson. I thought the Riders still were working through, I want to say, some of the garbage from the Craig Dickinson area, so to say, right? Corey Mace came in as a head coach, and we saw, we all thought he was going to make a huge impact on this team, and he's a big players guy. But they still had all that penalty trouble early in the season and attitude issues galore. And it seemed like it was one thing after another for this team. And so maybe they're just trying to get rid of some of that bad mojo, so to say, still. And I thought Mace had a decent year for his first year, and another year as a head coach will be really strong for him. And I believe this team can be a competitive team in that West Division, but it's all about what can you do to take that to the next level. That's hard to picture much like I was just saying with Edmonton, I think more so with Saskatchewan, it's hard to picture what this team will look like because they have so many free agents. They're not going to bring them all back, and I don't think they should bring them all back because they have some holes, but the question is which ones do, and how many of the ones that they want to bring back do they not get to because other teams poach them. Makes it very interesting. On the defense, the defensive line was really strong, good at stopping the run game last year. Same with the linebackers, defensive backs. Some of them were pretty good, but then they got eaten alive in that West final there a little bit. They've got some all-stars on defense for sure. That if they can bring all those guys back, I think that has to be a focus. The one spot I think Saskatchewan might be best in the CFL, and they're good from a free agent standpoint, is that wide receiver. The only receivers that are free agents are Mitchell Picton, Jarrett Stearns, and Colton Hunchak. That means you're bringing back Sam Emelis, you're bringing back Keon Schaefer-Baker, Sean Bain, not Jarrett Stearns, I just said him, Keyshawn Johnson, Deontay Myers, who ended up on the injured list. That's a stacked receiver core for whichever quarterback ends up being at the head of the Riders offense next season. And that might be attractive to one of those quarterbacks out there to want to come to Saskatchewan if they don't bring back Trevor Harris to get a chance to play with those guys.
No, 100%. I think talent-wise, Saskatchewan would be ideal for a lot of these guys, a lot of the available quarterbacks. Like I said, there's something I'm worried about. I'm worried about they're going to start looking for blood, the fan base, a little bit. And like we're
always looking for blood.
Well, that's what I mean. Winnipeg and Saskatchewan, we're like the Philadelphia and the New York. When you're winning for us, you'll hear it, but when you're losing for us, you'll also hear it, right? So, And that's kind of my worry. And I know there's a lot of questions about upper management in Saskatchewan too. And another bad year, what does that look like? And I know there's a lot of talk. We'll talk about it in the offseason. Looked like attendance was a little bit harder to get up in Saskatchewan, which is never a good thing where the 13th man isn't being the 13th man in Saskatchewan, right? So I think they need a big year to get maybe some of those asses back in the seats too, from that perspective. Because Adam was sending us a little article about how our stadium needs to be paid off. If they can't fill the stadium in Regina, that might need to be paid off too, buddy. So
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. All right. Final team here, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. 0-4 start to the season, 2-6 start to the season. They end up clawing back to 11-7 and winning the West Division after that dismal start. Tale of two seasons, and Winnipeg goes back to the Grey Cup for the 5th straight year. After the 2 wins, they now lose their 3rd straight. This one to a backup or a 3rd-string quarterback or whatever you want to call him, who ends up being the Grey Cup MOP. Zach Collaros struggling all season was a major storyline for the Bombers, except for 1 or 2 big games in there. The offense as a whole just being a nightmare. Brady Oliveira didn't start getting touchdowns till the second half of the season. And meanwhile, the Bombers defense absolutely shutting teams down, including that shutout over the BC Lions that I think put everybody on notice in the middle of the season, and a couple other huge games. Wild year for Winnipeg, to say the least, to end up the same spot they ended up the past couple. The question I've got for you is, what's the most impactful, realistic change this team makes after 3 straight Grey Cup losses? Because we talk about Winnipeg, we talk about Mike O'Shea. Mike O'Shea is loyal to a fault, and very much to a fault at times. I know what you would say if I didn't put the word realistic in here. You would go and say, move on from Zach Collaros, move on from Buck Pierce. The Bombers have already said, Mike O'Shea has already said, if nobody takes Buck Pierce for a head coaching role, then he will be back as offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. So BC could take him. Edmonton could take him. And supposedly the Bombers have already started reaching out to teams for an offensive coordinator role in case Buck gets poached. And Jordan Maximic from BC was one of them. And I would give you Buck Pierce in a second for that guy. But realistically, I don't know if we can say that's going to happen. And realistically, Zach Collaros I believe, has guaranteed money on his contract for next season. So the Bombers are paying him no matter what. So I know there's you want VA in Winnipeg. I know we want a new offensive coordinator in Winnipeg. Realistically, it's not going to happen. So what's the most impactful, realistic change this team makes? What do they need to do after the last 3 Grey Cup failures?
They need a reliable backup then, if I'm going to go that way. Chris Streveler isn't the reliable backup, even when he's... I didn't mind Wilson. I just didn't see him throw very much. So I'm not too sure in that department. He definitely can do the the 3rd inches job really well. Maybe that is a guy like Cam Dukes or Arbuckle if you're willing to spend a little bit on them for a backup role. Maybe the Bombers could convince Trey Ford to be a backup one more year for Collaros. I don't know. I mean, there are things. I don't think you're getting VA as a backup, not to fit under salary cap. I don't think you're getting Fajardo to back up here under salary cap. But maybe some of those guys just underneath guys like Dukes or Arbuckle.
Davis Alexander, what does the price look like there?
That's what I mean. Alexander, if they decide to go with Fajardo, maybe a couple of those guys in that's kind of the direction I would go, because then my wish could come true. If you have a solid guy, when there's an 0-6 start next year, you could tell Zach to ride the pine, right? That's my thing. You didn't have a guy this year to tell Collaros, like Strevler, you're not putting in there because Collaros is having a bad couple of weeks. You're not putting Wilson in there because he's having a couple bad weeks, or if we had that was it Scott that ended up back on the Argos for a little bit? Yeah. Those are guys we're putting in there because Collaros is having a couple bad games. But if you have Arbuckle, Dukes, guys who have shown like, hey, we're starters, we could be starters in this league, then yeah, I think 3-4 bad games. Maybe it puts a kick in the pants in Zach anyway, and he's like, oh, I could actually lose my job this year. So.
Yeah, I'm in the same camp thing. They got to get a proper backup in there. Like we said, we're both in the same category of we wish the Bombers would move on from Zach Collaros at quarterback. I am with you on that boat, but given the guaranteed money, that's not going to happen this season. And given the loyalty from Mike O'Shea, that's just not going to happen. So a lot of this, though, there's a lot of guys that are going to be trying to get that starting job out there and not enough starting jobs available for them. So if you start looking at backup roles, under the assumption that I think we're all under, that Collaros' contract is up after this year and after the Bombers host the Grey Cup, and that's when Winnipeg moves on from him or he retires or something like that, then Winnipeg backup role becomes the most desirable in CFL to me because you get that one-year role and you get that chance going forward there. So the number one for me is, Trey Ford. Most realistic, I guess, might be Trey Ford in that category of convince him to come play with his brother, and then he gets the starting job the year after, also gets to learn this offense there as well. Trying to think of what other names I could see off the top of my head from around the CFL, but that's kind of the glowing one to me would be to get Trey Ford in that category, but...
No, like Trey Ford. I really didn't mind Cameron Dukes earlier in the year. I would definitely put him under Ford though. Yeah, and if for some reason Montreal doesn't take Alexander, I guess that way. But yeah, you said realistic, and we're pretty sure Montreal's going that direction. I wouldn't take the Fajardo. I'm not taking Harris.
I just don't think you get. I think Fajardo's in the same camp as VA, where I don't think you're getting him to come in and.
That's what I mean. Yeah, you're not. Yeah. And to the amount you would have to pay them, they would want to be paid as a starter anyway. Yeah. Or knowing Winnipeg, they run with Strevler and Wilson. That's probably what the direction they're going to end up going, or at least Wilson if Strevy moves on. Because I don't, so.
I will say, and I don't think this will change your opinion at all. But I wonder sometimes the best addition in free agency is a guy who was on a season-long injury that's now healthy and ready to go. Yeah. And how much different would have Zach Collaros' year looked like this year with his favorite partner in the end zone, Dalton Schoen, if he had been healthy all season with those rollouts, find Schoen, touchdown, that's a handful there that he has relied on the last couple of seasons. And I wonder what him coming back, he is a free agent. I wonder what that deal looks like if Schoen comes back next year, and is he healthy, and is that enough to turn things around? I'm still in the camp, no, but.
No, if you look at this year, how much more does Schoen being out there make Lawler open? How much does that make Dembski open too? There's a lot to it. So you're right, that one guy could have made a difference. I can't open. Okay,
yeah, Schoen and Lawler and Whitehead are the free agents at receiver for Winnipeg. They've got a number of notables on defense as well. Willie Jefferson on the defensive line, Adam Bighill, Brandon Alexander, Tyrell Ford, Evan Holm. There's some big names for the Bombers on defense here. And I think you bring back a lot of these guys on the list, but a couple of names that I would be potentially looking at to move on from as veterans and replace with younger pieces are Adam Bighill and Brandon Alexander, if you need some cap savings from the Winnipeg side. Because I think Tony Jones should be prioritized as the Adam Bighill replacement at middle linebacker, who is also a free agent. I think they find enough pieces on defense that you could substitute somebody in for Brandon Alexander, who's been in the league a long time. So This team will likely try to bring most people back because that's what they do. But I think there are some tough decisions that you need to make, as I said in our post-game show, to get you the better chance to win when you get back there, if you can get back there.
Do you think the Bombers going to be in that situation where it might be Lawler or Schoen too? Kind of like what we saw maybe Bailey on the chopping block last year.
Well, I didn't think they were going to bring back Schoen and Oliveira both this offseason and somehow made that work.
That's fair. I mean, they got a lot of things. Their offensive line, a lot of their starting offensive lines up. Bryant, Neufeld, Dobson, Lofton, those were key pieces. Their defensive line, like you said, Jefferson, Jake Thomas, Garbutt, man, they got a lot of their team up. We're talking about maybe getting Trey Ford. Well, Tyrell Ford's up. Who says he doesn't go and sign in Edmonton?
That's fair. That is a good point.
There, right? So,
yeah. We've got some good YouTube comments.
Yeah, we do.
That we'll touch on in a second here.
The Bomber. Let's go to the question.
Yeah, sounds good. One news, I guess, on Bombers' side, Sergio Castillo got a contract extension. Of anybody on the free agent list, I feel like that's the Bomber you want back the most.
Oh, yeah. I was happy. Yeah.
All right, a couple of quick questions to end this off, if you want to take these yet. The first one here from Bill, what will the top priority be for the new commissioner? Increased profit for teams, expansion in the East, or something else? What do you think?
I think it's going to be both. Increased profits by getting a new team, right? Like, I mean, like I think that's kind of, I think you need the 10th team. I think that needs to be priority one. If Maritimes isn't a go, you got to look at Quebec, Southern Ontario. I know some people have thrown around another one in BC here and there. Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta are tapped out as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I think that 10th team is the big one. It adds so much more. It balances your schedule. It makes your schedule look a lot more sexy without having to have 3 buys in a weird week where 3 teams are on a bye and having a bye to start the year and end the year. Things that people like like the casual fan or the NFL is better fans roll their eyes at. And 5 games a week too just makes it a lot more sexy too for betting, right? That 5-game parlay makes those. Wait, we'll talk about it when that happens. I can't wait for the 5-game parlay in the CFL. Makes more games available for the schedule. You can do 1 Thursday, 1 Friday, 1 Saturday. You can have a doubleheader somewhere in there when there is a bye. I guess you would have to have 2 teams on a bye at the same time. You still have 4 games. I think the 10th team is a must. I had one more thing in my head now. I can't remember, but that was it.
The main thing for me, I agree with a lot of the things you've said. As somebody who lives more in the tech world, is really work on the tech side of things. Really work in the digital space. They've started, I think, something good with the CFL Plus online streaming and having that available, at least in the States for sure, and across the world. I think they can continue to improve on that. I think they need to improve on their streaming. You know, Randy Ambrosi in his interview before the Grey Cup kind of talked about like the next step to navigate is going to be a new TV deal, a new CBA, and getting a right person in place for all of that. And I think that's important as well. What does that next TV deal look like? What does the digital space? I want to see the CFL out there more in the digital. I want to see the tech more out there. I want to see this league get an app on the App Store because they used to have one and took it down because it wasn't maintained. I just want more social media content and digital content because that's how you market in today's day and age. Is getting that 10th team out there important for getting marketing in new areas? Yes, absolutely. But is getting more people invested in what's more and more an online world is a high priority for me. That would be probably my pick.
Can I throw something out here too? I think the next commissioner needs to be a not necessarily a football guy, but a business guy. That's my thing. Ambrosi, business guy, but he had a background in football, right? And who was it? Was it Orridge or something? We had for like half a year. He was too business. He didn't know anything from America. I don't know the candidates. I don't have a name in mind, but I think you need a Canadian businessman or woman.
Well, one of the names thrown out here by Scott in the YouTube chat is Mike Morial in the running for the job. I believe he's the head of the CEBL, the basketball league, and I haven't followed that league a whole ton, but I feel like I've seen good things from it, and it seems like it's gaining momentum in Canada. So if he wants to come,
games sold out, or so, there were for a long time. I thought, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would be for that potentially if he wants to come to the CFL. I feel like he's doing some good things there with the CEBL. FM fan popped in the YouTube chat to say I'll be happy to take one of the GMs from Winnipeg off Trey's hands. Of course, yes, because Ed Hervey is now going over to Edmonton. Hamilton is doing their search. And Danny McManus, Ted Gavaya are in consideration for that Ticats job as well.
I'll give them either one if they take Pierce with them. Then Zach, you take them all, and you can have both GMs for all, our assistant GMs for all.
That's the package deal. You figured it out. Scott talking about that stadium, and I think talking about expansion. Mike Morial is a former CFL player also. Okay, so maybe that falls into the category of what you were talking about, if not a football guy. But
I don't know. I just felt like when you get the football guys, it's. I'm sure he's great. I don't watch. I wanted the CEBL is one I want to get into more. Same with CPL, the soccer, like those little. I want to get into that more. But when do I have time, man? Just something like. I'm trying to think of a comparison. Like, you need someone kind of out of the system a little bit with the new ideas. Like you said, the tech. A football guy might not necessarily know the tech. Like maybe, it depends. Maybe they do. Ambrosie's got a business background. Morial's got a business background. They're probably going to do some things. I just wonder if you get some more outside of the box ideas on things a little bit non-football related. But maybe a guy who's been spending some time in the CEBL too. He knows how they've expanded pretty quickly too over the last few years. Maybe he is the guy to get the expansion going. And I want to give one thing. I wonder how much COVID played into it. I've seen it a couple times. Someone tweeted Naylor about that. Naylor kind of shut it down, being like, I don't think COVID affected it. COVID screwed up the world in so many different ways. We never really know. I wonder if we would have had that 10th team because it looked pretty promising before late 2019, 2020, right? So,
yeah, for sure. It absolutely did. I think I've got the solution for the commissioner problem. I'll do it. I'll take one for the team. There we go.
That means you're going to let me and Adam and Mike do the show?
We're not. Oh, okay, yeah. No, I'll keep doing it as commissioner.
Okay.
I gave you guys the keys recently. You did all right.
Maybe that would be like one of those intro, like you can't do that. You know what I mean? You can't cheer for a team as the commissioner, so you can't. You can't have a favorite CFL podcast either. Yeah,
Oh yeah, that's true. If I become commissioner of the CFL, can I no longer participate in our fantasy draft? Because then I'm out. Then I don't want the job.
At least you can give us that that influencer package to Grey Cup next year that they were giving out to some people.
Another comment talking about the expansion. The stadium in Moncton can seat 25,000. I don't get why that can't be a temp home until Halifax is ready to go. It's supposed to be a regional team anyhow, says Scott. I kind of agree that, I don't know. It's just weird how everything's played out with that team in Halifax. And maybe a fresh face as a commissioner and new ideas in there of somebody who's been involved in a new startup league in CBL has a better idea for how to make this work to get that job done.
Yeah, the Maritimes is fun. I don't know what the football situation is, but I see the horse racing situation a lot in the Maritimes, and it's always a gong show. Getting public money and the argument over that is probably the worst in Canada when it comes to horse racing. So I can only imagine what it would be for football, where it's a bigger stadium and a bigger situation than just a dirt track and a field. So I can understand why it's been a gong show, or a no show for this stadium. So I don't know the current situation. Again, you would think it would be easy. Why does the team own Quebec or Montreal for how long? The team owned other teams or the league owned other teams for a little bit. Just have the league own the team out there for a little bit until you get ownership. Does that put too much of a strain? I don't know. Maybe is there the other teams losing too much money? Because what is only 3 or 4 teams make money every year? Would that not, maybe a new TV deal would be the thing. If they just say, hey, TSN, you got to pay, or whoever, Sportsnet or whatever you bring to the table, hey, maybe we want a little bit more because we want the 10th team, and that brings you, guess what? That gives you more games. There could be some things there.
Yeah, I agree.
They need to get that sorted out too, I think, before the new year. I don't want this dragging out till March, April. So.
And we'll see who hits expansion first, the CFL or the UFL, who today announced that they are exploring expansion and trying to expand. So,
what if they get a team in the Maritimes?
Yeah, that's the UFL expansion. Imagine that they just the Maritimes give up on the CFL and go straight to the UFL. Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to talk about, or should we finally wrap this up?
Let's get out of here.
All right. Let's get into wrapping things up. I love all the comments that have come in this evening, by the way. I love it when the chat is live like this. Bunch of new faces in here as well. Hope you stick with us throughout the off season. What's coming up next on the podcast? You tell me, because I don't know. We're in off-season mode now. I will mention that. So, shows probably not guaranteed weekly, I would say, especially throughout December. Once we get into December here and the holidays rolling around, maybe a little less often, but we'll be back every once in a while to talk about the latest news. And then normally around free agency time, we have a lot of extra stuff coming in, and then, I don't know, trying out different things throughout the offseason I think would be fun as well. So let us know on social media what you would like to hear us talk about, or what concepts you want us to do, or anything throughout the offseason here on the podcast. You can follow us on X at CF Countdown Pod. You can follow us on Blue Sky. Search for CF Countdown Pod there as well. You can find us on Facebook.com/CF Countdown Pod. Send us your comments at any of those. You can also join our Discord community. The link is in the episode description. It's free to join us over there and give us your thoughts directly in the Discord. We love interacting with everybody there as well. Check out all the other great shows from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network at CF Pod Network on Twitter. Most of those probably getting into off-season mode as well. And the Alternative Football Network at the official AFN on X or alternativefootballnetwork.com. Sounds like they might have some stuff to talk about, all of the UFL-related podcasts there. So go check that out, our friends over there. Where can people find you on social media, Trey? And what do you all got going on?
Right now, nothing, man. Just, it's quite a quiet time of the year for everything. But you can find me at Trey and B Harness. Sure, I'll have some stuff with Adam Stewart 1 on.
Yeah. Adam's at Adam Stewart 1 on X. I believe he might have made the migration over to Blue Sky as well. Or somebody posing as Adam. Could be it. It could be a
fake Adam account. Oh man, my Adam burner account.
But you can find them there. You can find me on X at CooperTrooper42, on Blue Sky as well, where I'm trying to be a little more active there than I am on the X. Kind of moving over there. I feel like the community is more tight knit. So you can find me at CooperTrooper42 on both X and Blue Sky. Mike is at Mike Garrell on X if you want to see what he's got going on these days as well. Mentioned the Discord community. Whatever podcast platform you're listening on, we appreciate it if you do all the fun things, such as like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends, share the show with not your friends, as Trey brilliantly said a couple of episodes ago. Help us grow the show. We always appreciate that. And on behalf of Trey, I'm Ryan saying thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.